Okay, so good morning. It's not morning anymore. We're back here again for a second time. The topic I'd like to discuss today, which is evident in this week's Torah reading, Parashas Balak, and we're going to discuss reflection. That one should reflect in life. There's an old commercial back in my day, the pause that refreshes. We need to pause in life. We need to take time out to reflect. And we need to appreciate what the positive influences in our life are, and to try to detect that if we're veering off course, that there's a problem with that. So let's start by going back to some early fundamentals in the Torah, in the written law. If you notice, if you open up most chumashim, not every chumash has it. And the fact that not every chumash has it makes the question even stronger. That particular chumash that you're opening up will not have it, which in a way strengthens the question. There, as we know, if those that don't know, the written Torah, the Torah Shebeksav, is written without beginning or ends to psukim, to verses, to sentences. We don't know on our own. We wouldn't necessarily know. You can't even figure it out on your own. You would make mistakes. If you try to figure out on your own where every sentence ends in the Torah or every pause is in the Torah within a sentence, you would not be able to. That wouldn't be possible. That's part of not only tradition, that's part of the oral law. Oral law is how do you take the Torah? Where do the sentences start? Where do they end? And there the vowelization, what you call the trop. There are musical notes to the Torah, and those notes, in addition, tell you where there's a break in a sentence. Where's the midpoint in a sentence, or even within the midpoint of a sentence, there are two words that go together, as opposed to two words where there's a stop. And those notes, it depends how they're shaped. If it's shaped this way, like a mercha, it means to keep going. If it's shaped like a tipcha, it's the opposite way. So like you're hitting a wall, it almost looks like an open parentheses and closed parentheses, you know to stop. If you look at the written Torah, the only thing that you would notice that seems to be somewhat familiar is there seems to be paragraphs. Parshiot. There's a parsha in the Torah, means one subject, and the Torah ends the subject, and then nothing else would be written. There's a space between there and the beginning of the next paragraph. So you see at least where a paragraph ends. And the different types of paragraphs, they're noted either with the letter Pei or the letter Samach. And again, in that chumash you're looking at, you will not find it. You will not find because, and again, this is why I say it strengthens the question. Because what purpose does it serve? If we're learning chumash, so we would learn, and we'd see obviously where it ends, because we do have the nakudos, we have the vowels, we have the sentences, where the sentences start and end, and it's really rather obvious. So Rashi asked this question, not that it's Rashi's question. Rashi mentions this question. Now this goes back all the way, and what the parshios, what the paragraphs represent is it's a stop. You're supposed to stop. And Rashi's question is that again, we're going back even to when Moses learned the Torah and accepted Torah directly from Hashem, directly from God himself, there were parshios. There was, and Rashi asks, what purpose do they serve? Moses is being taught the Torah from God himself, and so what's the problem? Moshe was the quintessential student, and God, of course, is the quintessential teacher. So what's the problem? So much so, and this makes the question even more difficult. In other words, stronger, is when Moshe finished the entirety of the Torah, when God taught him Torah in its entirety, was after a 40-day period. No eating, no sleeping. So it was 40 days. That 40 days is multiplied by however many hours a person is capable of learning a day, but it's more than 40 regular days. In a regular day, you have to sleep, you have to eat, you have to take care of other things. There's not all that many free hours in a day, but this is 40 days nonstop. And yet Rashi says it's not possible for a human, even Moshe Rabbeinu, even learning the Torah directly from God himself, wasn't possible to comprehend the Torah in its entirety in a 40-day period. Which is why the verse said, after he received it, it said we read it one way. I got another interesting thing that again we can only know from the Masorah, from tradition, but tradition is not really the best word to use. Again, when the written Torah was given together with the oral law, meaning we were taught orally, how do we understand, how do we comprehend the written law? And there are some times when there's what's called a kri and a ksiv, how you would read the word had you not been instructed specifically how to read it, and how do you read it after you're specifically instructed on how to read the word. So the verse says, Vayhi kachaloso, this is how we read it, kachaloso, when Moshe finished learning the Torah directly from God, chaloso means kalos, the end, he finished. But if you would take just that one word, and I would say, how should you read this word? If you read it kechaloso, you'd be reading it incorrectly. Because you should read it kekalosoi, like his bride. Chatan and kala, we're familiar with the word akala, right? We all know that word. It should be read in a vacuum, you'd read it kekaloso. Because just like you give your bride presents when you marry her, so Moshe was given from God the Torah as a present. Even though he went through 40 days and night, no bodily functions, no eating, no sleeping, at the end of the day, it only could have been given as a present. But yet, during those 40 days, after every so-called end of a parsha, end of a subject, end of an inyan, it was a parsha in order, as Rashi says, litain revach lehisponein, to give a pause to reflect. Because whenever you come to an end of something, one needs to pause, one needs to reflect. What did I just study? What did I just learn? The Ramban in his famous letter says, anytime you learn Torah, when you get up from the learning of Torah, you should try to say to yourself, ask yourself the question, can I apply what I just studied? Can I apply what I just learned? How can I apply what I just learned into my life? Put it into practice. Of course, we're changed every time we study Torah. It changes us. It fundamentally changes us. That's our connection with Torah. But in addition to that, if you want to enhance the experience, how do I make Torah part of my life? So I want to give a couple of examples of where do we see the dangers of not pausing and where do we see the advantages of pausing. So the Mesilas Yesharim, the Ramchal, I think we mentioned him yesterday. I'm not sure I mentioned this yesterday. If I did, you'll tell me. We'll go over it quickly. One of Paro's designs when he enslaved the Jewish nation in Egypt, he used this as, now, if you think about it, it's not easy to, and he kind of eased his way into it. It was done like first voluntarily, and he had the Egyptians involved as well. He's enslaving basically an entire nation, which was within his nation, but we had already increased. We were quite a large multitude. We were living in the land of Goshen, which was part of Egypt. And one of his designs were, and Mesilas Yesharim speaks about this towards the beginning of his great work, is tichbar ha'avodah. Once he saw when we were complaining, some of the officers that were over us, over the regular Jews working, and they were Jews as well, they came to complain to Paro. It's too hard. You're telling us we have to make X amount of bricks a day. It's very, very difficult to do it. It may not even be possible to do it, and can't be done. So what did Paro do? He said, not only aren't I going to diminish your workload, but until now I supplied you with the straw, with the teven, and from now on you have to collect the teven, you have to collect the straw, and you have to make the same number. Tichbar ha'avodah, I'm going to make the avodah stronger, because because you're already thinking, how do I get out of it? If I make the work so hard, you won't even have the time to think. As the Mesilas Yesharim points out, because people, if they would have time to think, would change their ways. People that are doing what they're not supposed to be doing, they're going down the wrong path. That's one of the evil inclination, the Yetzirah. That's one of his weapons. He makes you so busy, and as we all know, the world with all its conveniences and all its comforts, it's not easier. It's not simpler. It's busier. It's more difficult. There are more distractions, and that's all part of the evil inclination. That's part of his design. It makes you so busy that you don't allow yourself the time to pause. You don't allow yourself the time to reflect. Now, I'd like to give an example that we had not long ago, 2 weeks ago, and we read in Pasha Shlach, the spies, the Meraglim. Familiar with that story? Very quickly, we're going to go up into the land of Eretz Yisrael and conquer Eretz Yisrael, and we sent out 12 spies. Now, these spies, these 12 men, were very, very, very righteous people. Right? The representatives of each of the 12 tribes of Am Yisrael, the Jewish nation, and the Torah itself testifies that these were 12 great men. They weren't just people that knew how to, survey land, or knew how to. They were good, they had good, reporting skills. These were great, learned, and righteous men. Now, I was in yesterday. I went with the JLE. I went to Hebron, and we were in Maras HaMachpelah. And actually, I was there in the winter. I was hit with a thought, which I think is extremely appropriate. Now, Kalev was one of the 12 who I went up to spy the land. And when they came back, 10 of them reported that there's no way we can conquer the land. They're literally going to eat us up. They're giants, they're warriors. It's not happening. Now, Kalev, who he was a little bit conniving, but rather ingenious, and his intentions are perfectly noble, he made believe, so to speak, that he was together with them in their evil design. And when they came back and the 10 reported that it's not going to happen, we're not going to be able to conquer the land, so the verse says, "Vayahas Kalev esa'am el Moshe." He all of a sudden he said, and Rashi gives more of the verbiage. What did he say? He said, "And is this all Moshe Rabbeinu did to us?" So everybody thought he was going to say more bad about Moshe. He said he split the sea for us, and he gave us the man, Yetzias Mitzrayim. He did all of these fantastic things for us. But Vayas Kalev esa'am, he quieted the entire people. Now, why do we need to know that? I want to tell you a thought that I heard just recently when I was still in New York from one of the lectures that I attend in New York. What happened? He quieted everybody down, and if we'll go through, we're not going to go through the whole sequence of events. It didn't stop anything. Seemingly, they wanted, Kalev and Yeshua tried to convince them. They wanted to kill them, and unfortunately, the decree that generation in its entirety, the generation was defined from the 20 to 60-year-old male population. It was decreed that none of them will be allowed, none of them will go into the land of Israel, into Eretz Yisrael. And that's, of course, a terrible, terrible decree. But what did Kalev stopped everybody, and that's Vayas. Like I said, he said like shh, and he succeeded. He got them quiet. Now we don't see what was gained from it, but the Torah is not an empty book. It's not a book at all. If you get everyone to just stop. I remember once, I don't know how, I just reminds me of the story, I don't know, I had the foresight to do it. I remember when many years ago, I was studying in Yeshiva in Lakewood, and obviously it was summertime, and the air conditioning, you have tremendous air conditioning equipment, the Freon exploded. It was a crazy explosion. And the place went into a panic. And the exit doors weren't sufficient in a crowd. Stampedes could be very dangerous. I don't know how to had the sense of mind. I stood up on my chair and I just yelled, "Stop!" And I don't know, everyone just stopped. And that's it. The stampede stopped. I didn't say everything's okay, everything will be okay, it's all right, don't worry. Just stopping slows you down. It stops what you were doing. So even though we don't see directly here the benefit, in the lecture I was hearing, he didn't say what specifically the benefit was, but stopping, it would have been worse. Stopping in itself, especially if you're sliding down, stopping has a benefit. It gives you time. It gives you time to reflect. So let's go to this week's Sedra. And now in a regular chumash, again, the chumash you're using it won't show you. All over in the Torah, you're going to see, and what's called Makros Gedolos, in most chumashim, they will show you wherever there's either a pei or a samach. If you'll go through this week's Sedra, the parsha of Balak, you will get almost till the very, very end, before in the Torah there's an end, before there's a pei. You can get all the way to the end of it's chapter Chafei, chapter 25. Vayesh Yisrael Bashitim. You can look, but you don't need to look. You're not going to see it in this chumash on page 874. But the entire, if you turn all the pages back, the entire Torah reading from the beginning is one paragraph. If you look in the Torah, it's one long run-on sentence. Now, it's not run-on sentences because we know through the Masorah where sentences end. But what is the Torah teaching us by putting this? Now, there are logical places where one could have inserted a new paragraph, because that was Bilam's mistake. Now, I'm not going to quote the names of where I saw everything I'm telling you, because I'm afraid, especially since I'm being taped, I'm afraid I may not give it over accurately. But whatever I'm saying is what I've seen in authoritative Sfarim. In authoritative Sfarim, what was Bilam? How did Bilam appear on the scene? What's the background? What happened? Why did Bilam exist? Why was he given such a level of prophecy? So Rashi in the beginning of the Torah reading, in the beginning of Sedra, says because the nations of the world had somewhat, or maybe even more than somewhat, of a legitimate complaint, a legitimate gripe. They said, look, if you would give us great leaders with great prophets, so we too would have rose to the challenge just like the nation of Israel, just like we did. So God gave them Bilam, and not only didn't he and the world, not only didn't they elevate themselves, but they sank to levels of immorality that heretofore they were living by and they were keeping, and even those they did away with. So instead of, not only didn't they go up, not only didn't they stay the same, unchanged, but they actually went down. So don't make the mistake. Again, I'm not saying from my own that Bilam was by nature an evil person. Don't think he was a person he was haughty, he was selfish. He was not compassionate, because that wouldn't. How would that answer then the Gentile nations, gripe? We had Moshe Rabbeinu, so Moshe Rabbeinu was Hanav Mikol Adam. He was the most humble person, as great as he was, and of course it means he understood his greatness. But he was given tools to develop himself into such a person. Now, everybody, when they're born, any katan, anything, especially when they're small, we all have in us certain character traits. We have good character traits, however you want to say it, in a 1 to 10, whether it's anger, haughtiness, selfishness. Some people are best naturally with good traits, but there is somewhat, a person that doesn't anger easily doesn't mean you cannot get him angry. So everyone has to work depending, and our roles in life and where we're tested in life is perfectly suited to whatever personality traits, whatever natural tools and gifts and talents that we were given. Moshe Rabbeinu was obviously blessed, and he used his tools and became as great as he was. But the greater a person is, we're taught, the Talmud teaches us, whoever is greater than his colleague, Yitzra Gadol Imenu, his evil inclination is greater. And it doesn't mean, and this I will quote from Rav Chaim Shmulevitz, who was a Yeshiva in the Yeshiva Mir in Yerushalayim. It doesn't mean that his evil inclination is commensurate with his so-called enhanced talents he was given to. It means he actually has his difficulty in battling his evil inclination is more difficult than our battle. Our battles are going to be on a level that's more base, on a lower level, and his is going to be more spiritual, since he is looked up to by so many people. How does he? You have to continue to look at yourself that, it's not you. You're just perfecting what the talents that God gave you, but that's accepted. Bilam was blessed with he was a talented person, and God blessed him with attributes of patience and forgiveness and selfishness. But we know what happens to a person. A person gets put into a position of fame and fortune and power. Kavod, as we know, is from the strongest attractions, especially as one gets older. And again, Rav Chaim Shmulevitz says this. He says, I can personally attest that as one gets older, the desires, inclinations that we have, and you're younger than me, they change. But the one desire that not only doesn't get weaker, it gets stronger, and that's the desire to be respected and acknowledged. You want to be somebody. And the expression in English is that that power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. So Bilam, so God did answer the Gentiles. He picked a perfect specimen and gave him the opportunity to rise to a level, to be a leader, to be a leader that would bring the nations of the world to a level. But they failed. They failed that miserably. To finish the thought with Bilam is why there is no, and that's exactly what's happening with Bilam. Bilam was on a treadmill. A treadmill just keeps going. If you don't stop it, or you don't jump off, you just keep going. You have no choice. You can't stay on the treadmill and just stop walking or running. You can injure yourself. You have to actively stop the treadmill. And if you just stay on it, you're just going to keep going. And Bilam just kept going. He never paused. He never stopped to reflect. And that's really a very important exercise. Again, the Mesilas Yesharim strongly urges, and not only urges, it's something that you need to do. At the end of the day, it's supposed to be Yefashvesh b'masav, some say Yemashmesh b'masav, and it says both are true. You have to examine, what did I do today? What did I do this week? What did I do this month? What did I do this year? You have to examine what you've done. Am I doing a good deed? Am I doing a bad deed? And as he says, and even the good deeds that I did I do them properly? Yes.
Is that in parallel to why there aren't any breaks in here?
Yes, the parallel is that Bilam fell into that, and he never reflected. The entirety of the way the Torah treats the entire story of Bilam is like one long run-on sentence. There are no breaks, no paragraphs. Exactly what the pei or the samach in the written Torah is supposed to tell you to do. And even when God taught Torah directly to Moses, and even though he gave it to him as a present, between every subject there was a stop, litein, revach, lehizbonein. That's bina. Not just that you have the facts. Bina means when you understand it's a deeper level of understanding. You have to realize what is happening. Where am I going? Well, what are the results of this? Analysis. The Rabbi Yolovsky, who speaks sometimes at Rosamech, I asked him if I can use this line. He uses a line. He said, do you want to live the life you lived, or do you want to live the life you chose? I don't know if it's most people, but certainly a lot of people, at the end of their lives, why did you end up doing what you did? And a lot of times it just seems, well, I thought I was going to teach, I thought I was going to do this, but I don't know, but then my friends offered me and I ended up, owning a chain of fast food stores. And not that that's bad. You can live a very noble life owning a chain of fast food stores. But a lot of people, and I'm going to say unfortunately, because it's not only of career choices, how did you spend your leisure time? What was important to you? Did you live your life doing what was important to you at the moment? Because it feels good. Well, of course it feels good. We're human beings. Human beings like what feels good. But when someone is older, and even if you're not older yet, and I'm talking older means when you're in your, you should all live to be old. Somebody's 95 years old, and he should live to be more than 95, this fellow. If you ask him what are his regrets, is he going to regret that I didn't spend an extra hour in the office? Is he going to regret that I should have went that other round of golf? Or whatever the leisure activities, there were a couple of countries I wanted to visit, I didn't visit them? Or is he going to say, I wish I was closer to my children? I wish I appreciated my wife more? I wish I involved myself in activities, in local, chesed organizations. I wish I studied more Torah. We know the answer to those questions. At the end of your life, what really is meaningful, all of a sudden becomes so obviously. It becomes, that's what I should have done. So if we how do we live the life we chose? Is project ourselves. How do we? Okay, imagine yourselves all being 80 years old now. What would you be proud of? What would you want to tell your children at the end of your life that this is what I'd like to see from you? Now, people can live relatively, commendable lives, but yet have been very, very selfish. We live in a very selfish generation. I remember reading many years ago an article from Rabbi Soloveitchik from Yeshiva University, and it was almost prophetic. And I remember I read this like 40 years ago, and he wrote it, I think, 30 years prior to that. There's come a time people can become so selfish they're not going to have children, which at that time would have been like, but now that's commonplace. Of course, they hide behind, I was talking to a student yesterday, he doesn't want to have children, he wants to only adopt children. Because there's so many unwanted children in the world, and there's already too many people in the world. I said, it's very commendable to want to adopt a child. I certainly wouldn't try to talk you out of it. It's not easy. It's not easy. But we're taught, Man di yohev chaya, yov mezayna. The one that gives life, he gives sustenance. We don't have to worry about the world's resources. People get involved today in environmentalism. Now, again, it's a personal opinion, because everybody needs their own God, and everybody needs their own religion. And it's very easy just to say, well, I'm an environmentalist, and that's the extent of my religion, and I don't have to do anything else. I don't need the Torah, I don't need anything else. I can just get angry at people that are seemingly like using plastic bottles. They're not living a green life. Now, obviously, it doesn't make sense to have a factory spewing out, waste materials into your drinking water. I mean, you don't have to be too bright to know that doesn't make sense. But we also know that they carry it to an extreme. The world was designed to be here for as long as you live the world. We have to live sensibly. But if that becomes if that's your focus, that should not take up most of your day. That should not be. That they're one issue. They'll vote in an election. They'll vote to a politician. What was your vote based on? Is he pro-environment? That's it. That's your only priority in life. Forget about getting into the the authenticity of global warming and climate control, which at best we don't know. But would you really like that's what you're going to devote and dedicate your life to? So the lesson from the Seder is we need to focus on what is it that I know is meaningful. There are meaningful things in life that we know. There's family, there's children, there's your parents, there are your friends, there's being Jewish. A fundamental of being Jewish is to be good to focus on another person. And I've mentioned him a few times, but the story was so meaningful to me. Rav Chaim Shmulevitz, who was known as an extreme, he was very diligent in his learning. He was a masmid. They say stories. He would put his feet in ice cold water to stay awake, and he was a tremendous, very, very diligent. And he used to, on the street where the yeshiva is, in the Beit Yisrael neighborhood, not far from here, he would sometimes stop in front of a children's store, and he'd look into the window of children's shoes, and he'd just look into the store. And the students would wonder, like, what is the Rosh Yeshiva? Why is he doing that? One day, one of the students had the Gul, whatever. I don't know if he was such a formidable person. I did meet him. I didn't know him well, unfortunately. He asked him, what is the Yeshiva looking at? He says, I'm imagining a young mother coming in, buying her child's first pair of shoes. And I'm trying to relate to that level of happiness, to that level of simcha. That's life. The basic life is that someone else should be content. Chesed, when we do chesed, we do acts of kindness. The way most of us do acts of kindness, and it's exemplary that we do it. Someone is in need. He's in need. And not only that, and where do we give? Well, he's deserving of that need. He's going through tough times, and you help him out. It's extremely commendable. But chesed in its pure form is somebody wants something, and I give him what he wants. It doesn't matter. The level of necessity or need is not the issue. Chesed is, he wants it. If he wants it, I can give him what he wants, because then you're emulating God himself. Because God created the world, the hate of Mabrios, to bestow good. He put us here, he gave us the Torah, he gave us the mitzvot, he gave us the commandments. We should do them in order that he should reward us. Because God wants to give. And I once heard a beautiful thought to me, it just, it opened it up so beautifully. We make a bracha, men make a bracha every day, men and boys. Shelo yasani isha. We didn't make us a woman. So it almost sounds, when a woman makes a bracha, she says, Shasani kitsono. It's like, you almost think like, so just say nothing, okay, you made me what I am, And I heard a beautiful insight from Shmuel Kamenetsky, the yeshiva in Philadelphia, in the United States. He said, it's sha'asani kirtsono, that a woman says that I'm patterned after what motivates God himself. Kirtsono, his desire. What's God's desire? God's desire is to bestow goodness. And the woman said that's a primary responsibility. A woman is very different than a man. God willing, soon at the right time, you'll get married. And of course, being a father is without a doubt, the most special moment of my life. And thank God I have a large family. The birth of my oldest child, who was a girl, was a moment that, yes, I had other children and I love them all. And now that they're all here, I don't love the oldest one more than the other ones. But that moment, and it's for a mother, and we will hopefully you'll get to see what it is. A mother, she just changes. I mean, just the whole chemical, with everything going on inside her. Of course, she's the one. The mother provides, a man is very good at providing ideas. And we're original. but we want to do so many different things. So many different things. And the seed of a man, one man could have children from many, many women, and it's not, and a woman, she creates one child at a time, and there's only a capability of X amount, even from birth on. If you dissect an embryo, there's a certain amount, she has the capabilities of only a certain amount of potential children. A man has potential for many, many. Each child is a different idea. A man technically could be, the number is who knows what number. The woman provides the environment, the love, the nurturing. That's where it takes place. It doesn't bother her getting up. I remember my children, we had to get up twice. Usually if the baby got up twice, I had to get up to do 2 feedings. And so I always took the second feeding, and I always hoped that maybe the baby wouldn't get up a second time, And my wife would get up, and this first feeding, the baby would make the smallest sound, my wife would jump out of bed, and okay, and then it's like 4:30 in the morning, and the baby's crying, and my wife says, Zecharia, like I said, look, I didn't tell you how to handle your feeding, don't tell me how to handle my feeding. I want the baby to cry and get really hungry, because you get up right away, they're not really up yet, and I really have the baby in mind. No, we're essentially different. A woman naturally, she wants to give. But of course, we all have to try to reach that level. So hopefully, we should all get to the point, take the lesson from this week's Sedra, and realize that if we're constantly on the treadmill, if we don't stop, when we learn, we don't say, what did I just learn? How can I incorporate what I learned, like we mentioned from the Ramban? And if we take time, we set aside, it could be 15 seconds. It doesn't take a lot of time. Sometimes like once a week, once a month. Am I, where do I think I want to go? Am I headed there? And hopefully, God willing, you and us and all of us, we should take the lessons from this week's Torah portion, and constantly, because even I'm a little bit older than you guys, but it's okay. So midlife, but by midlife, that's it. It's only midlife. Okay, we can. The Psukim tell us it's in Tehillim. You have to do work that's designed for your younger years, and there's different work which is very much the same work, which is for your middle-aged years and your older years. And we're instructed to have instructed to have students when the rabbis themselves were young, students when the rabbis were older. There's what to be gained from every person, anyone that's alive today. In Tafshin Ayin Hey, in the year 2015, wherever we live, we're all part of this year's team. We're all part of the A team. We're all part of the Am Yisrael, and we all have specific jobs to do. We're all so fine. The center field and the shortstop and the pitcher, you may say they're more important than the right fielder because you don't have that many lefties. But everyone has a position to play. And the famous example, there was a master conductor listening to a symphony. And it just so happened that at that recording, instead of, I'm not sure how many violinists are usually on a symphony, but let's say it was supposed to be 13 and there's only 12. And he didn't show up, so they recorded it anyway. But the master conductor, who hadn't been at that recording, when listening to it, says, there's a violinist missing. So we don't hear that. We think that the music that we're playing doesn't make a difference. But there's a certain song that God wants to hear. And every one of us here is playing an instrument that only he or she can play. And only together will we create that ultimate Shir Chadash, like we say on the night of the Seder. And that for the coming of the Mashiach, and we'll all be playing all that beautiful music together. Thank you so much.